I cannot accept this mate bond. Those 6 words didn't just break my heart, they stripped me of my dignity in front of the entire pack. My name is Skye Anderson, and tonight I was supposed to find my destiny. Instead, my fated Makeheath future Alpha King rejected me because I'm wolfless. He wants a warrior to bear his heirs. He thinks I'm a broken spare, but he's about to find out that a cornered wolf is most dangerous right before she bites. The hunt festival is our most sacred tradition. Tonight, we celebrate our strength, our speed, our very nature as wolves. Alpha James began, his voice carried across the clearing. Tonight, we hunt as our ancestors did. We prove ourselves worthy of our lineage. Our breath formed clouds in the frigid Alaskan air as the entire Frostshadow Pack gathered around the massive bonfire. Alpha James stood before us. His powerful frame was silhouetted against the flames. Leon, his son, stood at his right. He was tall and proud, with piercing blue eyes that seemed to look through everyone. Now, pack members began shifting around me. Human forms melted into powerful wolf shapes. Some were massive, like Leon's dark brown wolf. Others were smaller but no less intimidating. Soon, the clearing contained only 3 groups: the elders who chose not to hunt, the children too young to participate, and me, the adult, without a wolf. Skye, Alpha James approached. Since this is your first hunt festival as an adult, you may use this. He extended his arm, offering me a hunting rifle. Whispers rippled through the remaining crowd. This was unprecedented. Weapons weren't typically allowed in the hunt festival. Thank you, Alpha, I said. I accepted the rifle with steady hands despite the humiliation burning in my chest. Good luck, he said, but his eyes held pity. As the wolves disappeared into the forest, I felt the weight of sympathetic stares. They all believed I would fail, that I would return empty-handed. I gripped the rifle tighter. I'll prove them wrong. Midnight found me deep in the forest. I was alone with the rifle and my determination. The full moon illuminated the snow with an otherworldly glow, turning the landscape into a sea of silver and shadow. My breath formed crystals in the air as I tracked a snowshoe hare through the underbrush. Not the most impressive prey, but it would be something. Better than returning empty-handed. I positioned myself behind a fallen log, sighting down the barrel as the hare paused to nibble at exposed bark. My finger tensed on the trigger. Then it hit me. A scent so powerful it made me dizzy and snow, and something wild that I couldn't name. The smell invaded my senses, overwhelming in its intensity. I'd never experienced anything like it before. My nose had never been this sensitive. My heart pounded against my ribs as realization dawned. This was what they'd described. This was what happened when you found your mate. But this can't be happening. Without my wolf, I shouldn't be able to detect a mate's scent. Yet here I was, drawn by an invisible thread I couldn't explain or resist. The scent pulled me deeper into the forest, leading me away from the familiar hunting grounds of the Frostshadow Pack. Perhaps this was a sign my wolf was finally coming. The scent grew impossibly stronger, making me dizzy with its intensity. I closed my eyes, trying to steady myself. When I opened my eyes again, all thoughts of mates and wolves vanished in an instant. I found no mate, only a monster. Not 20 feet away stood a massive grizzly bear, its breath visible in the cold night air. In the moonlight, I could see the silver tips of its brown fur, the massive paws that could tear me apart with a single swipe. I had wandered far from the pack's hunting area, far from any help. And without my wolf, I was just a human girl facing one of nature's most dangerous predators. The bear dropped to all fours and took a step toward me. I turned and bolted, my boots slipping on the snow-covered ground. Behind me, I heard the bear's huffing breath, the sound of its massive body crashing through the underbrush. My foot caught on an exposed root hidden beneath the snow, and I went down hard. The rifle, the gift from Alpha James that I'd nearly forgotten, tumbled into the snow beside me. As the bear's growl grew closer, my fingers closed around the cold metal of the gun. Rolling onto my back, I raised the rifle with shaking hands. I fired. Once, twice, 3 times. The reports echoed through the silent forest, each shot jolting through my arms. The bear roared, but kept coming. I squeezed my eyes shut, certain I was about to die. Then came a sound I hadn't expected, the bear's pained bellow. followed by a heavy thud. Had I actually hit it? Had I brought down a grizzly bear? My eyes snapped open. In the silver moonlight, I saw not just the fallen bear, but the massive brown wolf standing over it, fangs bared in a silent snarl. Blood matted the fur around its muzzle, evidence of its attack on the bear. I knew that wolf. "Leon," I whispered. The wolf's head turned toward me, those blue eyes locking with mine. I should have felt relieved, grateful. Leon had saved my life. "Thank you, Leon," I called out, pushing through the snow toward him. My voice cracked with emotion. "If you hadn't shown up, I would have been dead for sure. You'll definitely be the champion of this hunt festival." But as I approached, something in his ice-blue wolf eyes made me pause. There was no warmth there. Instead, his gaze was cold, almost distant. Before I could decipher his expression, Leon began to shift. The transformation was fluid and graceful for a receding into skin, bones and muscles rearranging themselves under the pale moonlight. I'd seen people shift before, of course, but something about watching Leon transform made heat rise to my cheeks. Leon stood at least 6'2", his tall frame dominating the clearing. His golden hair, now tousled from the shift, caught the moonlight like spun silver. The defined muscles of his chest and abdomen rippled with each breath, testament to years of training and his alpha bloodline. No wonder Leon was the fantasy of nearly every girl in the pack. Even Maya, the most popular girl in our pack, knew he wasn't her mate but still hovered around him like a moth to a flame. Looking at him now, strong and completely naked, I finally lowered my gaze in embarrassment. A strange heat stirred in my lower abdomen, a sensation I had never felt before, a flutter of warmth that left me flustered. That's when the scent hit me again, stronger, more intoxicating than before. Pine and snow and wildness, but now with another note, something metallic. Blood. Could he really be my mate? I wondered, my heart racing as the scent enveloped me. Wait, something's different. This blood smell, it's not the bear's. Slowly, I lifted my eyes back to Leon and froze in horror. There, on his left shoulder, was an unmistakable wound, a bullet hole that was slowly closing. In my panic, I had shot wildly at the bear and hit Leon instead. Skye's POV. "Leon, I didn't mean to," I stammered, taking a step toward him, hands outstretched in a helpless gesture. I was so scared of the bear. He regarded me with those piercing blue eyes. His expression remained unreadable as he said flatly, "It's fine, we should head back." Without another word, he gathered some nearby vines and wove them into a makeshift rope with practiced skill. I stepped forward, reaching out to help him. "Let me," I started. "Don't," Leon said, his voice cool as he pushed my hands away. "Just take care of yourself, that's enough." I stepped back, feeling the sting of his rejection. My cheeks burned with embarrassment as I watched him secure the rope around the grizzly's massive carcass and begin dragging the impressive trophy through the snow. Guilt gnawed at my insides. Was he angry with me? It had to be because I had shot him. I wanted to apologize again, but the words stuck in my throat as I watched his rigid back moving away from me. I followed silently behind Leon, the only sounds in the wilderness being our footsteps and the soft scraping of the bear's body across the snow. That unique scent continued to plague my senses. Questions burned in my mind, threatening to consume me from within. Finally, I gathered my courage. "You showing up here wasn't a coincidence, was it? Did you sense me too? Are we mates?" Leon halted so suddenly, I crashed into his solid frame, my body pressing against the hard planes of his chest. The impact sent a jolt through me, and I felt a sharp tension in his body against mine, making my breath catch. His breath, warm and ragged, carried the scent of pine, blood, and raw masculinity. My heart pounded. He's my mate. The thought seared through me, undeniable, intoxicating. I tried to step back, nerves sparking, but Leon's hand shot out, gripping my waist with possessive strength, pulling me closer. My pulse thundered as his fingers brushed the edge of my waistband, a faint touch that sent a shiver racing through me, my body tensing instinctively at his proximity. I closed my eyes, a soft gasp escaping as his gaze locked with mine, heavy with unspoken emotion. In that moment, I was his, ready to give in to the pull between us, longing for things I couldn't name. But then, nothing. His hand withdrew abruptly and he shoved me back. "Mate!" His voice was a low, guttural growl, dripping with disdain. "You could never be my mate." I staggered backward, my boots sinking into the snow as a searing pain tore through my chest. It felt as though something essential was being ripped from my soul, leaving behind a raw, gaping wound. I'd always had a crush on Leon. What girl in the pack hadn't? He was the Alpha's son, with his golden hair and ice-blue eyes. He looked like a prince from a fairy tale. Yet my feelings for him had only ever been admiration, maybe attraction, certainly not love or obsession. So why did this hurt so deeply? "It's getting late," Leon said, his voice devoid of emotion. "We need to get back to the pack. The competition is almost over." Without waiting for my response, he turned away and resumed dragging the massive grizzly through the snow. I stood frozen for a moment, trying to catch my breath as the pain continued to pulse through me in dizzying waves. Forcing myself to move, I followed after Leon, nearly running to keep up with his long strides. By the time we reached the Frostshadow Pack's campground, most hunters had already returned. The massive bonfire at the center of the clearing illuminated an impressive display of the night's hunt rabbits, deer, and even a few elk arranged to showcase each wolf's prowess. Leon unceremoniously dropped the grizzly near the fire, the massive carcass landing with a heavy thud that drew all eyes in our direction. Murmurs of awe rippled through the gathered wolves as they took in the size of the bear. Without a word, Leon stalked away toward the supply tents, presumably to find clothes. I lingered near the periphery, unsure where to place myself in this celebration. The rifle hung heavy in my hands, a reminder of my failure. Not only had I failed to bring down prey of my own, but I'd shot the pack's future alpha. "What did you catch, Skye?" Maya's voice dripped with false sweetness as she approached, dragging a decent-sized elk behind her. "Don't tell me you came back empty-handed." I clenched my fists, the pain in my chest momentarily overshadowed by a flare of anger. "Mind your own business. You shouldn't even be in this competition. A person without a wolf participating in the hunt festival is like a blind person entering an archery contest. It's just pathetic." The words struck a nerve, and I felt my eyes begin to burn with unshed tears. Before I could respond, an arm dropped around my shoulders. "Say another word about my sister." My brother Ethan growled, "And Leon and I won't be taking you joyriding anymore." Maya's smile faltered. She stuck out her tongue, childishly, but retreated with her elk, throwing one last smug look over her shoulder. "Thanks," I murmured, leaning into my brother's warmth. Ethan squeezed my shoulder. "Don't let her get to you. Maya's just jealous because you've always been smarter than her." I tried to smile, but the pain in my chest had returned, a dull, persistent ache that made it hard to focus on anything else. Leon returned to the bonfire, now dressed in dark hunting clothes, his hair slightly damp as though he'd hastily washed away the blood from the hunt. My eyes followed him involuntarily, drawn to him despite the agony his words had caused me. Alpha James began his inspection of the night's bounty, moving methodically from one kill to the next with appraising eyes. Finally, he stood beside the massive grizzly, placing one hand on its thick fur. "The champion of this year's hunt festival," he announced, his voice ringing through the clearing, "is my son Leon." Cheers erupted around us. Some wolves even threw back their heads in celebratory howls. Ethan stepped forward to clap Leon on the back. "Where did you find such a beast?" my brother asked, admiration clear in his voice. Leon didn't respond to Ethan. Instead, his gaze traveled over the crowd until it found me standing at the edge. After a moment of charged silence, Leon turned to his father. "Alpha," he said, his voice carrying across the now quieting crowd, "I have something to announce." The clearing fell silent, all attention riveted on the Alpha's son. My heart began to race, a sense of foreboding washing over me like the first chill wind before a blizzard. "Tonight in the forest," Leon announced, his voice carrying across the now silent clearing, "I discovered that Skye is my mate." Gasps and excited murmurs spread through the gathered wolves. Shock registered on every face, some delighted, others confused, and a few clearly displeased. Elder wolves exchanged knowing glances while young girls whispered furiously. For a fleeting moment, hope fluttered in my chest. Had Leon changed his mind since our encounter in the forest? That punishing pain that had been radiating through my body since his first rejection eased slightly, allowing me to breathe. Then Leon raised his hand, silencing the growing tide of congratulations and surprised exclamations. "But," he continued, his voice dropping lower, heavier, "I cannot accept this mate bond." The words fell like an avalanche, burying that brief spark of hope. The clearing went deathly quiet. Even the crackling bonfire seemed to hush. "Skye has no wolf," Leon said, his ice blue eyes now fixed directly on mine, his tone clinical and detached. "And during tonight's hunt, she shot me with the rifle Alpha lent her." More gasps rippled through the crowd. Some turned to look at me with fresh horror, as though I'd committed some terrible crime. The weight of their stares pressed down on me from all sides. As future Alpha, Leon continued, unwavering, "I need a strong Luna, someone who can protect our pack and produce powerful offspring. Our pack hasn't produced an Alpha King in 28 years. He looked around, meeting the eyes of the older pack members who nodded in solemn agreement. "The next Alpha King election, I must give everything I have. For the good of our pack, I must reject this mate bond." Every word was a fresh cut, deeper than the last. I felt my body grow cold, then hot, then numb. The blood in my veins seemed to freeze, making it difficult to even draw breath. If Ethan hadn't returned to my side, I might have collapsed under the weight of Leon's public rejection. Around me, the pack's reaction was immediate and mixed. Whispers spread like wildfire. Some nodded in approval of Leon's pragmatic decision, while others looked uncomfortable, stealing pitying glances in my direction. Maya's voice rose above the murmurs, clear and triumphant. "He's right. A Luna without a wolf would make us the laughingstock of all packs. How could she possibly lead us?" Several others nodded, emboldened by Maya's outspoken support. "This can't be happening. Not like this, not in front of everyone." Alpha James stepped forward, his expression grave. He placed a heavy hand on Leon's shoulder, his eyes searching his son's face. "Leon, are you certain this is what you want?" he asked. "Perhaps we should wait. Skye might yet develop her wolf. It could be just a matter of time." Leon shook his head, resolute. "I can't take that risk, Father. I won't make a decision that could harm our pack's future." His expression softened slightly as he glanced toward me. "Skye is a good person. I never wanted to hurt her. I'll always protect her like a sister, like a sister." The words twisted the knife deeper. I didn't want his protection. I wanted. Ethan looked torn, his gaze shifting between Leon and me. After a moment of visible internal struggle, he squeezed my shoulder gently. "I should talk to him," he muttered. This is too sudden." Before I could respond, Ethan had crossed to Leon's side. They exchanged quiet words before walking away from the fire together, heads bent in serious conversation. The sound of shattering pottery cut through the whispers. My mother stood at the edge of the clearing, a plate of freshly baked cookies now scattered across the snow at her feet. Her face had gone pale, eyes wide with shock and dismay. But no one paid attention to the broken plate, or the wasted cookie-salt eyes remained fixed on the unfolding drama. My parents rushed to my side. Mom wrapped her arms around me, pulling me close against her chest, as though I were still a child. Dad stood rigid beside us, his jaw clenched and eyes burning with barely contained fury. "How dare he hissed, his voice low and dangerous. "How dare he do this to you, publicly, without warning?" Through the haze of tears that had begun to blur my vision, I caught sight of Maya in the crowd. Her lips were curved in a satisfied smirk, eyes gleaming with vindictive pleasure at my public humiliation. She leaned toward her friends, whispering something that made them laugh, their eyes darting toward me. A resolve cold and unyielding as Alaskan ice. If Leon didn't want me, fine. If the pack thought me weak because I had no wolf, fine. I would show them all exactly what Skye Anderson was made of with or without a wolf. But first, I needed to escape the pitying stares and malicious whispers. I needed to breathe air that wasn't heavy with the scent of pine and snow and wilderness, his scent. I gently extracted myself from my mother's embrace, wiping away tears with the back of my hand. "I need to be alone," I whispered, my voice surprisingly steady despite the storm raging inside me. Mom nodded, understanding in her eyes. Dad looked ready to argue, but a look from Mom silenced him. With as much dignity as I could muster, I turned and walked away from the bonfire, away from the celebration that had become my public shaming. I forced myself to keep my head high, my back straight. I am more than their judgment. I am more than his rejection. I am more than the wolf I don't have. The mantra repeated in my mind as I disappeared into the shadows of our pack's territory, leaving behind the firelight and the eyes that had witnessed my greatest humiliation. Behind me, I could still hear Maya's laughter, carried on the wind like the distant howl of a wolf. Skye's POV. The walk home from the hunt festival was a blur. I barely registered the snow crunching beneath my boots or the wind whipping against my tear-streaked face. My chest felt like it had been hollowed out, leaving nothing but a raw, pulsing emptiness where my heart should have been. Mom guided me through the door of our cabin. The familiar scent of pine furniture and cinnamon that usually brought comfort now seemed distant, like it belonged to someone else's life. "Let's get you warmed up," she whispered, her voice gentle as she helped me out of my snow-damp clothes and into soft flannel pajamas. I crawled into bed without a word, curling onto my side and pulling my knees to my chest. My mate, my wolf, my dignity all gone in a single night. Mom sat on the edge of the bed, her fingers combing through my silver hair with the same tenderness she'd shown when I was a child. The gesture, so familiar and loving, only made the tears come faster. "This isn't your fault, Skye," she murmured, her voice breaking slightly. "None of this is your fault." I began to cry quietly, my body shaking with each silent sob. Mom didn't try to hush me or offer empty platitudes. She simply continued stroking my hair. I don't know how long I cried, but eventually, the sound of the front door opening and closing announced Dad's arrival. His heavy footsteps approached my room, and soon I felt the mattress dip as he settled on the other side of the bed. His large, calloused hand came to rest on my leg, warm and steady. "My little warrior," he said softly, using the nickname he'd given me when I was small and insisted on following him and Ethan into the woods for training. As my sobs gradually subsided into occasional hiccups, I became aware of what was missing. Or rather, who? "Where's Ethan?" I asked, my voice raw from crying. The brief silence that followed told me everything I needed to know before either of my parents spoke. Mom finally said, "Seriously? In the moment I needed him most, my brother had chosen his best friend over me. His alpha over his sister. Of course he is," I whispered. Dad's hand tightened slightly on my leg. "He's torn, Skye. He doesn't. Don't make excuses for him." I cut in. "Not tonight." Mom and Dad exchanged a look over me, their silent communication as clear as if they'd spoken aloud. They wouldn't push, not when I was already shattered. I must have drifted into a fitful sleep, because the next thing I knew, I was being pulled awake by the sound of voices in the hallway outside my room. "Think she would be—" That was my father, his deep voice thrumming with barely contained fury. "I understand your anger," came Leon's measured response, "but I had my reasons. This has nothing to do with personal feelings." I stiffened beneath my blankets, every muscle tensing at the sound of his voice. The mate bond, though rejected, pulsed painfully in response to his proximity, like a broken limb that hadn't been properly set. Careful not to make a sound, I shifted closer to the door, straining to hear their conversation. "I must win the next Alpha King election," Leon continued, "and I absolutely have the strength to do it. You were there when my mother died. Her last wish was for me to become Alpha King. I cannot fail her." There was a brief pause before he added, his voice hardening. "Skye hasn't manifested her wolf, and her shooting skills are worse than an average human warrior's. How could I accept her as my mate? These are simply facts." "That's not her fault," my father snarled. "Her wolf will appear when it's ready, and that shooting incident was completely accidental. I'll train her in combat myself. She can protect the pack just as well as any wolf warrior." A Luna without a wolf cannot protect the pack, Leon replied, his voice maddeningly calm, nor can she ensure strong offspring. Then tell me, my father demanded, his voice dropping to a dangerous low, what reason do we have to stay in this pack? If my daughter can't get respect and protection here, why shouldn't we leave? Leave. Leave the only home I'd ever known. The thought was simultaneously terrifying and strangely liberating. Dad, please don't be so impulsive, Ethan's voice cut in. Remember who you are. You're the beta of Frostshadow Pack. How can you talk about abandoning the pack so casually? I know this is unfair to Skye, but helping Leon win the next Alpha King election is also my life's goal. I'll help her find her second chance mate, I promise. This heartache is temporary. Don't you want to see Frostshadow Pack become stronger? Don't you remember how devastating our losses were in the great battle against the vampires 7 years ago? Leon's mother, our Luna. The conversation fell into tense silence. I clutched my blankets tighter, the mention of the vampire war awakening memories we all tried to keep buried. So many pack members lost, including Leon's mother, who had sacrificed herself to save several wolf pups, including me and Ethan. I suddenly felt ashamed of my tears, as if my pain was somehow selfish in the face of what our pack had endured. Was I being childish to feel so betrayed? Was I letting down the entire pack by not accepting Leon's rejection with quiet dignity? Skye? Leon's voice called softly through the door, startling me from my thoughts. I slammed the door shut with all my strength, leaning my back against the door. I slowly slid down until I was sitting on the floor. I heard him sigh heavily, followed by the sound of retreating footsteps. As I lay there in the darkness staring at the ceiling, I thought about the Alpha King election. Every 4 years, alphas from approximately 50 packs across North America competed for the title. Just 3 months ago, a new Alpha King had been crowned. The Alpha King advocated for his own pack and allied packs, establishing policies that favored them. Every pack wanted their alpha to hold that position, which required not only winning votes but also proving superior strength. A powerful female, Luna, could enhance an alpha's fighting abilities. I understood the importance of the Alpha King election. What I couldn't understand was why Leon had to publicly humiliate me. Tomorrow, everyone would treat me like a loser, a joke. The thought of facing the pack, of seeing Maya's smug face, of enduring the pitying glances and whispered comments made me feel physically ill. A thought flashed through my head. Maybe I should just get out of here. Skye's POV, time to get up, Skye, Ethan's voice called, muffled through the wood. I groaned, rolling over in bed. My head throbbed like someone had taken a sledgehammer to it, and my eyes felt gritty, swollen from last night's tears. You okay? Ethan asked, poking his head into the room. Fine, I lied, my voice raspy. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Listen, the new Alpha of Storm Howl Pack, Maxwell, is visiting today. As the Beta's family, we're expected at the banquet tonight. You think I'm in any shape to play dress up and smile for some visiting alpha? You gonna hide in here forever? You're stronger than that, Skye. Show up looking like $1,000,000 and prove to everyone you're not broken. He stepped forward, placing a sleek black gift box on my bed. Picked this out for you, wear it tonight. I stared at the box, the ache in my chest flaring. Ethan was right, I couldn't let them see me crumble. Fine, I muttered, I'll go. That evening, I stood in front of the mirror, smoothing the fitted sky blue dress Ethan had chosen. It hugged my curves, the silky fabric catching the light. I'd tamed my hair into loose waves and dabbed on enough makeup to hide the evidence of my breakdown. I looked presentable at the banquet hall. The air buzzed with chatter and the clink of glasses. The long table was laden with roasted meats, fresh bread, and pitchers of wine. My parents flanked me as we took our seats, Ethan across from us. I scanned the room, my stomach twisting when I spotted Leon near the head of the table, his golden hair gleaming under the chandeliers. Our eyes met for a split second before I jerked my gaze away, focusing on the plate in front of me. Alpha Maxwell, a broad-shouldered man with a salt and pepper beard, stood to raise a toast to the Frostshadow Pack, and to Leon, a fine young wolf who'll make a hell of an alpha one day. Then he grinned at Leon. Tell me, have you found your mate yet? My fork froze halfway to my mouth. Leon's gaze flicked to me, cool and unreadable. I have, he said evenly, but I don't think she's suitable. Whispers rippled through the room, and I felt every eye turn to me. Before I could process the sting, Maya's voice cut through, sharp and gleeful. Alpha Maxwell, allow me to introduce the unsuitable woman sitting right across from you. Skye has no wolf and could never produce strong heirs for our pack. The room went silent. My face burned, and I gripped my fork so hard my knuckles whitened. Maya, enough. Alpha James snapped, his tone sharp enough to make her flinch. Maxwell's eyes slid to me, appraising. Shame, she's beautiful. I wanted to disappear, to sink through the floor, and never come back. Maxwell turned back to Leon, his tone casual. Here's a thought. You don't have to reject your mate. I could send you a strong, beautiful female warrior from my pack to bear your children. It'd strengthen the alliance between our packs. What do you say? The implication hit me like a slap. A woman to bear Leon's children while I what? Sat by and watched? My father's voice cut through the haze. Alpha Maxwell, that suggestion is inappropriate. But Alpha James, to my horror, leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. Actually, it's not a bad idea. Skye's always cared for Leon, hasn't she? He looked at Leon. Leon's eyes met mine again, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of hesitation. Then he spoke, his voice steady. It could work. If Skye's willing, she could still be the future Luna, and we'd ensure strong heirs for the pack. I'm not willing, I spat, my voice shaking with rage. Not now, not ever. I didn't wait for a response. I turned and stormed out, the chatter of the banquet fading behind me as I pushed through the heavy doors into the cold night air. Skye, wait. Leon's voice chased me, and before I could get far, his hand closed around my arm, pulling me to a stop. This is the best solution. You'd be Luna. What more do you want? I yanked my arm free, glaring up at him. What more? You think I'd share my mate, stand by while you build a family with some other woman? What kind of woman do you think I am? His jaw tightened. She'd only be there to have children. Once that's done, she'd step back. I laughed, a bitter, broken sound. You're unbelievable. I'd rather accept your rejection than live like that. His eyes darkened, but I didn't give him a chance to respond. I turned and ran, my heels sinking into the snow as I fled toward the lake, tears blurring my vision. The lake was a mirror of stars, its surface barely rippling in the frigid night. I collapsed onto the shore, my sobs echoing in the stillness. The pain in my chest was unbearable. A jagged wound that refused to close. Miss, I hate to interrupt, but you're sitting on my clothes. I froze, whipping around to see a man emerging from the water, his form half-shadowed in the moonlight. My heart raced, and I took a step back, instantly on guard. Who are you? I demanded, scanning the darkness. A rogue. I couldn't make out his face. Easy, he said, his voice calm, almost amused. I'm with Stormhowl Pack, here with Alpha Maxwell. I frowned, my hands still clenched. Then why aren't you at the banquet? And why the hell are you swimming? The water's practically ice. He chuckled, a low, warm sound. Could ask you the same thing. Why's a pretty girl like you crying by a lake in the middle of the night? It's none of your business. He swam closer to the shore, and as he started to climb out, I caught a glimpse of bare skin below his waist. My face burned, and I thrust his clothes toward him, spinning around to give him privacy. Here, I muttered. Thanks, he said, and I heard the rustle of fabric as he dressed. Desperate to change the subject, I blurted, Your pack, Stormhowl. You've got a lot of strong, beautiful female warriors, right? Plenty, he said. Why? My chest tightened, the image of Leon building a life with some perfect warrior woman flashing through my mind. I regretted asking. No reason, I mumbled. He stepped closer, his voice softening. You're beautiful too, you know. Why compare yourself to anyone else? I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could, Ethan's voice cut through the night. Skye. Ethan jogged toward me, his eyes narrowing at the man behind me. Who's this? Just a warrior from Stormhowl, I said quickly. Ethan grabbed my hand. You ran off, and Mom and Dad are freaking out. Come back with me. I let him pull me away. glancing back at the stranger. His face was blurred in the darkness. Adrian's POV, I never wanted to come here. If it weren't for my mother, I wouldn't have agreed to accompany Uncle Maxwell to Frostshadow Pack. She begged me to support him, said it was time to put the pack first and let go of the past. Let go of the past. She meant my father. It's only been a few months since we buried him, and already Maxwell was sitting in his chair, wearing the title of Alpha like it had always belonged to him. The Stormhowl Council stood behind him. So did my mother. You're still young, Adrian, she told me. Stormhowl needs stability after the rogue attacks. Your uncle can offer that now. He has more experience. I'd heard it all before. Over and over. Stability, strength, survival. But the truth was simpler. My mother loved Maxwell, having fallen for her husband's brother. She wanted peace. Even if it meant betraying everything my father stood for. Even if it meant handing the pack over to Maxwell and asking me to smile through it. So here I was, not as the rightful alpha of Stormhowl, but as a quiet, obedient guest following Maxwell's lead like one of his guards, just another son of the dead alpha. The Frostshadow lands were nothing like Stormhowl's warm, sunlit beaches. Alaska's winter felt hollow and gray, as if the cold here didn't just bite your skin but settled deep into your bones. The snow fell slow and heavy, quieting the world like a blanket no one asked for. I skipped the banquet. Maxwell said Alpha James was throwing a celebration tonight. Something about the end of the hunting festival. A banquet full of roasted meat, fine wine, and political smiles. No thanks. I headed to the frozen lake at the edge of Frostshadow territory. It was far from the warm lights of the great hall. No one would look for me here. I stripped off my clothes and dove into the water, letting the shock of it cut straight through me. Cold, sharp, pure. It used to be my father who taught me to swim through icy currents. He'd say, "If you can survive this, you can survive anything." I remembered the way he used to laugh, loud and free, echoing across the surface of the water. Now, all that was left were the ripples and my breath. When I resurfaced, I heard footsteps crunching on snow, my muscles tensed, instincts sharp. A figure in a blue dress stood near the shore, her arms folded tightly across her chest. Her silver hair shimmered in the moonlight like frost. She didn't see me at first. She was crying, soft and quiet, her shoulders trembling. I frowned. No one should be out here alone like that, especially not someone dressed like they belonged at the banquet. "Miss," I called, swimming closer to the bank. "I hate to interrupt, but I think you're sitting on my clothes." She jerked back, startled. Her gaze snapped to mine, and I watched suspicion flash across her face. She was quick to move, eyes narrowing, shoulders tightening. "Smart. Who are you?" she demanded. "Stormhowl Pack," I said, keeping my voice even. "Here with Alpha Maxwell." She didn't relax, not one bit. "Good. Why aren't you at the banquet?" she asked. "And why are you swimming? The water's freezing." "I could ask you the same thing," I said. "Why is someone like you crying alone by a lake in a dress like that?" "That's none of your business," she snapped. I chuckled, shaking water from my hair as I stepped out onto the snow-covered shore. She squeaked and spun around, holding out my clothes blindly over her shoulder. "Here," she muttered. "Appreciate it," I said, pulling my shirt over my head. After a moment, she asked, "Your pack has a lot of female warriors, right?" That caught me off guard. "Plenty," I replied slowly. "Why?" "No reason," she said too fast. There was pain in her voice she tried to bury. I didn't push. Still, something about her stirred something quiet in me. She didn't know me. I didn't know her. But for a brief second, we were just two people running from something bigger than ourselves. "You're beautiful, you know," I said. "Don't waste time comparing yourself to anyone else." She turned slightly, as if to say something. But before she could, a male voice rang out, "Skye." The girl flinched and turned around. A tall man jogged toward her dark-haired, sharp eyes. "Brother, maybe." He didn't look happy to see me. "Who's this?" he asked, eyeing me. "Just a warrior from Stormhowl," she replied quickly. He grabbed her hand. "You ran off and Mom and Dad are freaking out. Come back with me." She let him lead her away, and just like that, she vanished into the trees like a dream slipping through my fingers. I bent down to grab my shoes and felt something under my heel. A broken hairpin, silver with a green gemstone, cracked where I had stepped on it. It must have been hers. I tucked it into my coat pocket. If I saw her again, I'd return it. Back at the guest house Alpha James had prepared, I barely had time to towel off before Maxwell burst in, reeking of alcohol and self-importance. "I've got good news," he announced. I stayed seated, schooling my face into polite interest. "What is it?" he grinned, plopping down across from me. "You've been single for too long, Adrian. I've found someone for you. Beautiful, strong, from Frostshadow." I raised an eyebrow. "You're matchmaking now?" "She's perfect," he said, thrusting his phone at me. "Name's Maya. She's their top female warrior." The woman on the screen wore red lipstick and a form-fitting bodysuit. Her eyes burned with arrogance. Everything about her screamed ambition. "No," I said flatly. "I'm not interested. Unless she's my mate. Don't waste your time." Maxwell's smile faded. "Don't be stupid. This is bigger than you. It's a political alliance. Frostshadow needs support, and so do we. You think the rogues are done?" I stood, walking to the window. Snow was falling again, quiet, endless. "I already gave you the alpha seat," I said. "I won't give you my life choices, too," he scoffed. "You think you still have a choice? You can't lead Stormhowl from the shadows forever. This is the best offer you'll get." "I'm not marrying someone to please you," I said without turning. "Now leave. I need rest." He muttered something under his breath, then moved toward the door. "I'll speak with your mother. She'll understand how important this is." He left, slamming the door behind him. I leaned against the window, watching the snow blanket the trees. A war raged inside me of loyalty, grief, and resentment. This wasn't the life I wanted. Maybe it was time I stopped waiting for things to go back to how they were. Maybe my best option was to leave Stormhowl Pack. Skye's POV. I woke the next morning with swollen red eyes. I needed to leave. Today. The thought gave me a surge of energy. To hell with the proposal. I wasn't going to stay here and keep taking insults from Leon and Maya. First, I needed to eat. I had barely touched the food at the banquet last night. As I went downstairs, a strange, nauseating smell reached my nose. I followed it to the kitchen and found Mom there. "Good morning, Mom," I said as I stepped into the room. She jumped slightly and turned around quickly, pushing something into a drawer. "Skye, you startled me." I wrinkled my nose. "Do you smell that? It's kind of gross." Her eyes shifted to the side. "Oh, that. I found some rotten eggs while making cookies this morning. I had to throw them out," she said softly. She placed a steaming mug of apple cinnamon tea and a plate of gingerbread cookies in front of me. They were shaped like wolves, bears, and rabbits. "I made your favorites." The cookies were still warm, fresh from the oven. I picked up a little wolf-shaped one. My throat tightened. It was obvious Mom hadn't slept. The shadows under her eyes told the story. While I cried myself to sleep, she had stayed up, baking my childhood favorites. Guilt stirred inside me, battling with my resolve to leave. Then she sat down beside me and hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Skye, I think maybe you should consider Alpha Maxwell's proposal from last night." The cookie slipped from my hand. "Mom," I said, my voice sharp with disbelief, "how could you even say that? I thought you were the one person who truly understood me." She looked startled, flustered. "I only said it because I want what's best for you," she rushed to explain. "Sometimes when you love someone, you have to make sacrifices. And you're not alone, Skye. You still have us, don't you?" I bit down on my lip, trying to keep my voice steady. "Even if everyone thinks I'm selfish, I can't share my life with someone I don't choose. I won't." Mom quickly reached out to soothe me, her voice softening. Okay, I'm not forcing you. I just want you to be happy. That's all I care about." I nodded silently. The words lodged in my throat. I was halfway through my second cookie when a familiar voice rang out through the open kitchen window, tearing the moment apart. "Ethan, training's about to start. Everyone's waiting for you." Maya's voice was sharp and commanding. Heavy footsteps came down the stairs. Ethan rushed into the room but paused when he saw me at the table. Uncertainty crossed his face. "Skye, he began, taking a step toward me. "Ethan, hurry up." Maya's voice cut through again. Our eyes met. I saw guilt, worry, and something like regret. But he looked toward the window, toward the waiting pack, toward his alpha. "I've got to go," he said, stepping back. "We'll talk later, okay?" I nodded, keeping my face down as I sipped my tea. He rushed out the door. Once again, the choice had been made, and once again, it wasn't me. My resolve solidified. What was left for me here? No training, no real place, just watching from the sidelines while others lived the lives I wasn't allowed to have. I was the burden, the one without a wolf, the weak link everyone had to protect. I was nothing here. Maybe even less than nothing. Mom sat beside me and gently placed her hand over mine. "How are you feeling today, sweetie?" I tried to smile, just tired, didn't sleep well. "That's understandable," she said, stroking the back of my hand with her thumb. "You've been through a lot. I think I'll go rest for a bit," I said, finishing the tea. "Don't worry about me, Mom. You should help with the meat smoking. I know there's a lot to do after the festival." She hesitated, watching my face. "Are you sure I can stay with you?" "I'm sure," I said, forcing cheer into my voice. "Besides, Ethan and Dad brought down 2 deer last night. That's a lot of meat." She finally nodded. "All right, but I'll check on you later." As soon as she stepped outside, I ran upstairs. My heart beat faster. I didn't have much time. From my window, I saw the pack gathering around the smoking sheds. They would be busy for hours. The smell of curing meat would fill the air soon. No one would notice me leaving. I moved quickly. My deerskin backpack, stitched by Mom with detailed beadwork, was ready in minutes. I packed warm clothes, toiletries, and the money I had saved from summer jobs. My fingers brushed over the bone flute. Ethan had made me for my 10th birthday. He had spent so long carving it, getting the sound just right. I couldn't leave it behind. I also grabbed my most prized possession, the silver dagger Dad had forged for me after the Vampire War. He called it Tink because of the sound silver makes when it hits stone. "You'll always be protected," he had said, "even when I can't be there." I hadn't understood it then, but now I did. I ran my fingers along the carved handle and placed it in the bag. I checked the window again. Mom was hanging strips of venison on the racks. Dad wasn't in sight. He was likely in the smokehouse with the senior pack. I returned to my desk and pulled out a blank sheet of paper. There was so much I wanted to say. Apologies, explanations, reassurance. But when I held the pen, no words came. How do you condense a lifetime into a single note? I kept it simple. "I love you all, but I can't stay. Please don't worry about me, and please don't try to find me. I'll be okay, Skye." Tears burned behind my eyes as I placed the note on my pillow. But I blinked them back. I needed to be strong. I pulled on a white knit cap to hide my silver hair, so different from the golden tones of most pack members. Then I slung my bag over my shoulder and stepped quietly out the back door. The keys to my birthday present a red compact car Dad had given me just yesterday felt cold in my hand. I started the engine and eased down the long driveway. I didn't look back. Leon's POV. The training ground echoed with grunts and the dull thuds of bodies hitting frozen earth. Around me, Frostshadow Pack's young warriors paired off in combat exercises. I should have been focused, correcting stances, and offering guidance as the Alpha's son. Instead, my mind kept drifting back to the hunting night. The feel of her close to me, the flutter of tension between us, the pull of the mate bond that I'd fought so hard to ignore. My body ached to claim her, to give in to the connection between us, but reason clawed me back her fragility. Her lack of a wolf, the pack's future, the proposal to have a female warrior bear my children seemed like the perfect solution. I couldn't understand why Skye was so furious. She'd been spoiled by her family, completely clueless about responsibility. What shocked me the most, though, was that she actually accepted my rejection. "You're wide open." The warning came too late. Ethan's shoulder slammed into my chest, sending me sprawling onto my back. For a moment, all I could do was stare up at the pale winter sky. Ethan loomed over me, extending his hand. "That's the 3rd time today. Where's your head at?" "Just tired," I muttered. Around us, the other warriors had paused their training to watch. Maya didn't bother hiding her interest. Her blonde hair pulled back in a tight braid, her gaze tracking my movements with barely disguised hunger. Again, I commanded, resuming my stance. As Ethan and I circled each other, my mind drifted to a memory from last month. Skye had been watching our training session from the sidelines, wrapped in that oversized blue coat she loved. When Ethan executed a perfect takedown on one of our newer recruits, she jumped up, clapping and cheering like it was the most impressive thing she'd ever seen. "Soon I'll be right there with you guys," she'd called out, her silver hair catching the light of the season's first snowfall. "Just wait until I shift." But she had just turned 18 last week, and she still hadn't shifted. I'm 3 years older than Skye. I had already shifted when I was 15. My distraction cost me again. Ethan's leg swept mine from under me, and I found myself staring at the sky for the second time. "Seriously, Leon," Ethan said. "Water break." I called out to the group, needing a moment to collect myself. 7 years ago, I watched as a vampire's claws attacked my mother. I was only 14. Frozen in horror as she placed herself between the vampire and a group of pups, Ethan and Skye among them. Her last words to me, blood on her lips: "Become Alpha King. Protect them all." The memory had burned away any childish notions of romance or infatuation. Since then, I've had only one purpose: to fulfill my mother's dying wish. I'd dated briefly in the years after, more to satisfy the natural urges of my wolf than out of any emotional connection. When I sensed that Skye was my mate last night, disappointment had been my first reaction. Aluna needed to be like my mother: intelligent, powerful, graceful, and willing to sacrifice everything for the pack, if necessary. Skye lacked these qualities. I'd followed her into the forest deliberately, watching from the shadows as she encountered the grizzly. I'd waited, hoping that in that moment of extreme danger, something would awaken in her wolf, perhaps, or at least some instinct for survival. Instead, she'd fallen, firing wildly in panic. If I couldn't trust her to handle a single bear, how could I trust her to face vampires, hunters, or rival packs? "Leon," Maya's voice snapped me out of my thoughts. "Here," she said, sitting down beside me and handing me a bottle of water. I accepted it with a nod, taking a long drink before handing it back. Maya lingered, her eyes searching my face. "You did the right thing, you know," she said. "The pack needs a Luna who can fight alongside you, not someone who needs protecting." Her words were a mirror of my own thoughts, yet hearing them aloud made me uncomfortable. I grunted non-committally and turned away, but Maya wasn't finished. "My mother says there hasn't been a latent wolf in our pack for 3 generations. It's a bad sign." She leaned closer, voice dropping to a whisper. "Everyone agrees you made the right choice." "Training resumes in 2 minutes," I announced loudly, ignoring her comment. As evening approached and training concluded, an unexpected visitor arrived at the training grounds. Skye's mother hurried toward us, her face drawn with worry. "Ethan," she called. "Is Skye here with you?" Ethan frowned, looking to me before shaking his head. "No, I haven't seen her all day." "Why?" "She's gone," his mother said, her voice trembling as she held out a small piece of paper. "I found this on her pillow after I finished with the meat smoking." Ethan took the note, his expression darkening as he read. The ink had blurred in places tear stains. My stomach clenched with a sudden, inexplicable dread. "What does it say?" I asked, moving closer. Before Ethan could answer, my father's voice filled my mind through our pack bond. "Leon, we've detected rogue wolves near our eastern border. Gather your training group and investigate immediately." The blood drained from my face. I locked eyes with Ethan, knowing he'd received the same message. Without a word, we both sprinted toward the forest, still in our training clothes. Behind us, I heard Skye's mother call out in confusion, but there was no time to explain. If Skye had left the pack's protection, if she was out there alone with rogues nearby. Leon's POV. The night air cut through my lungs like frozen blades as I ran through the forest. Ethan kept pace beside me. Tracking should have been simple in the fresh snow, but Skye's trail was strangely faint, like we were chasing a ghost. "Anything?" Ethan's voice broke through the sound of our crunching boots. I shook my head with frustration. "It's like she's not even here." I had never seen a trail this hard to follow. Even humans left some traces, sweat or fear, but Skye's trail was like snow itself, cold, fleeting, and almost invisible. "Maybe she hasn't shifted yet," Ethan said with tension in his voice. "That could mess with her scent." I kept thinking about my father's warning. He had told us about rogues near our border. These rogues were wolves without packs or laws. They lived in chaos with no honor or restraint, and now Skye was out there alone. She might cross their path. A wolf's howl cut through the trees. It was sharp and foreign, not from Frostshadow. Ethan and I locked eyes. We turned toward the sound and ran faster. If rogues had seen her, or worse, the howl came again. It was closer now, and joined by another. My heart pounded as we reached the top of a ridge. Below us, in a clearing, we saw the glow of a fire. We slowed down and crouched low with our senses alert. The scent of smoke mixed with something musky and wild.